Hey, this is Matt with Bradley Siderograph, and I'm excited to go over this video with you, the turn dates that are going to take place later in 2018 on June the 1st and on August the 28th. So these are going to be the largest turn dates in the Bradley Siderograph and the long terms since the March 2009 low in the S&P 500. So let's talk about what that means. If you come over here, you can see the March 2009 low in the S&P 500, and you can see that between that time period and today is March 12th, 2018, you can see that the Bradley Siderograph, the lowest point that it reached was right here, and the highest point that it's going to reach since that low is on June the 1st, 2018. So it is interesting to note that it's the highest point. Some people that follow the Bradley Siderograph, they actually do not like to take into account how high it is versus how low it is. They like to give equal weight to a point such as this one and a point such as this one. But if you are the type of person that is interested in an especially high point, June the 1st is an interesting date. But for me, what I'm more interested in than the June 1st, 2018 date is the long terms turn date on August the 28th, 2018. And there are a few reasons why. So let's talk about that. If you go back to the tech boom, so it was around March of 2000, right over here is when the stock market peaked. That was the tech boom where all the technology stocks were doing very well. And you can see that the long terms had a significant low at that point. So if you go from this entire graph, which is August of 1995, through approximately August of 2005, you can see that this light blue line right here, the long terms, you can see that the low point took place right over here, which was not too far away from the March 2000 top in the S&P 500. So obviously the NASDAQ had a bigger high than the S&P 500, but the S&P 500 also had a high at approximately this time. So this is considered to be an inversion, which is basically where the indicator makes a low and the security makes a high. But either way, it's interesting to me that if you look at the very low point for this time period, that corresponded to a high point in the S&P 500. And then if you come over here, you can see that since January 1st of 2015, between that time period and today, the correlation between the long terms and the S&P 500, it's been 78%. So that's a pretty high correlation. Obviously, correlation is not causation. There's no guarantee that the two will always move together, but I find that to be pretty interesting. And you can see here a graph in 2015 of the long terms and the S&P 500. And you can see that it's kind of interesting that when this massive drop takes place in 2015, it's pretty much exactly at this low point right here. And then the high point for 2015 took place at about the high point for the S&P 500. Here you have another inversion. It's basically where you have a top in the indicator and a low in the security price. But overall, I found 2015 to be especially strong. Here's the value for 2016. Another inversion, a high in the indicator and a low in the security. And then over here for 2017, you can see that throughout the year, the long terms increase and overall the S&P 500 also increases. And then here we have 2018. So where we have this low in the long terms, we've started to see some market volatility in the S&P 500. So this right here is that turn date that I was talking about that's going to take place later this year for the long terms. And to give you a longer term perspective, you can see it's August 28th is when that's going to take place. And if we actually take a different view, if you take a look going forward, you can see that for this entire 10-year period, so this is August the 13th to approximately August of 2023, you can see that for this entire time period, the highest point for the long terms will take place right then. Once again, it's August the 28th, 2018. So I find this to be interesting, especially because if you looked back for the tech boom that we saw earlier, this graph right here, where the tech boom top took place at approximately the same time as the low point in the long terms, I find it interesting that the long terms are making a long-term top right here. So that's why I found that to be interesting. So I wanted to share that with you. And here we have a graph, once again, of a more zoomed in version of the long terms for 2018. And you can see here, this is where we are right now in approximately mid-March of 2018. And you can see that on August 28th, that's when the long terms are going to make a top. But one thing that's also worth looking into is what I would call the rate of change. So what that means is how fast are the long terms increasing or decreasing? And if you take a look at that, you can basically see right here where we had the high in the S&P 500. So basically the S&P 500 went up and then it went down. That corresponded to the rate of change, which is basically how fast are the long terms increasing or decreasing. And you can see that that S&P 500 mimicked that, and then the low for the rate of change took place at approximately the same time as the low for the S&P 500. And the S&P 500 has been going up. So this date right here, it's basically, what is this, about April 14th, 15th, 16th. So in mid-April, that's when the rate of change in the long terms is going to start tapering off and going down. But this is the date right here that I'm pretty interested in. It's basically August 28th, 2018. So hope you found this video to be useful, and thank you for watching.